Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Urban Tribes and is from designer Richard Gurley. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. There will be a link up in the top corner of your screen as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Urban Tribes is a game where you're trying to develop a city to your liking. Every player is a different tribe, so to speak. You are a different class of people moving into this neighborhood and wanting it to represent your values the most. You've got the hipsters, you've got the preppers, you've got the, not doomsday preppers, but like preppies. You've got the soccer moms and so on. And you all want to have this place reflect what you want in an urban neighborhood. But of course, that's easier said than done. And it's not just that you have to make the types of buildings that you want, but you have to make sure that you have a seat on the city council and therefore have influence over how you can build these and where you can build and things like that. In order to do that, you need cash coming in, and you just need to generally have cultural influence in the city. And of course, all of that is easier said than done. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at the game with a prototype version of the game. So do keep in mind that what you see in this version may change in the final version. Then we're going to come back. I'll give you my final thoughts. Urban Tribes is a competitive game for up to 4 players. Each player is a different cultural group who is trying to shape their city to appeal to their group the most and ultimately take control. There are 2 different ways to win the game. In a cultural victory, once the population of the city reaches a certain point, 50,000 for a standard game, whoever has accrued the most mojo, which are cultural influence points, will be the winner. In a political victory, if one player controls at least 11 of the 21 city council seats 2 rounds in a row, they are automatically the winner. Every player gets a different tribe, represented by a playmat with a male and female side. There's no difference between the tribes except for flavor. You get a set of meeples, a set of business and cultural institution tiles, a score sheet, 2 permit cards, and 10 cash. A pawn in your color goes on the Mojo score track, and another goes on the turn order track, in no particular order for right now. Also on the board, you'll place a pawn on the population track at 2,000. This will keep track of rounds of play. The actual city area of the board needs to be populated with a certain amount of residential tiles, which are neutral tiles that limit the building area of the players. You can use the rulebook setup pictured here, or you can do a random setup via the building permit cards. Each one of these cards has a random board setup in the bottom corner, so just draw one at the start of the game. However, building permits have another main use, which is to enable the players to build and change the city, and in that regard, they're all the same. A deck of event cards are shuffled and placed on the board as well. We'll get to those later. Finally, every player will place a 2-lot business or cultural institution tile in a vacant block of the Boondocks section of the board. There are several different resources in the game to worry about. Businesses produce cash and cultural institutions produce mojo. Mojo will help you win the game, but you'll need cash to actually make the buildings. Both resources will help you get city council seats, which will get you building permits, which you'll also need to make buildings. Permits can be sold for 1 cash each, and 5 cash can be used to buy 1 mojo during the game. The building area of the board has 4 sectors: Boondocks, Suburbs, Midtown, and Downtown. Each sector has multiple blocks, each one with 4 lots. Each sector and each size of building costs a different amount of cash depending on the sector. Also, it is possible for 2 players to jointly build, in which case you use the appropriate dual tile, and each player only needs to pay half the cost. Each round of the game is broken up into phases. First is elections. The players will each secretly write a donation amount on the back of their score sheets. When revealed, the first, second, and third place donors will get 6, 4, and 2 city council seats. Mojo is the other deciding factor, with 5, 3, and 2 seats going to the first, second, and third place players on the Mojo track. This is represented by placing their meeples on the board in the appropriate spot. After the election, each player gets a building permit for every seat they have. Distribute them one by one evenly in case you run out of permits. The next phase is the construction phase. First, the number of seats will determine the player order as well, and you should adjust the pawns accordingly. Next, you must check for eminent domain. Remove the lowest value non-residential building from the board. Whoever is the owner gets the building cost back in cash, but not the permit. Players may then, in turn order, either build, expand, or demolish. You can do this as much as you want and also in tandem with other players for shared buildings. But once you pass your turn, you are done for this round, except to enter into shared projects with other players. Building requires a number of building permits equal to the amount of lots you're building on, plus the combined cash cost of every lot. If it's a shared building, you and the other player involved must decide immediately who will pay what costs. You can split the cash and permit costs however you like, but you can't promise things for later. Along those lines, you can also expand an existing building by paying for the additional lots with cash and permits and putting a different tile out. However, it can't change ownership at all. If it started off as exclusively yours, it must remain only yours. If it's a shared building, it must still be a shared building, and you must negotiate the extra costs. You can build over existing buildings, but to do so you must demolish those old buildings using permits and paying back the owner or owners of the building. And you can't demolish for the sake of demolishing. You must build something immediately afterwards. The final phase is cleanup, where each player gets their cash and mojo income. Each business pays out the indicated board amount in cash, and the cultural institutions pay out mojo. Shared buildings will have the payout split between the owners. The population marker will be moved up, and then each player will draw one event card, though they can never have more than 3. Event cards can only be played at particular times, and they will give you a variety of effects, from free or discounted buildings, to city council manipulation, to draining cash and mojo from the other players. There is another use for event cards, and it has to do with the end of the game. The game ends either when the players reach a predetermined population, or during the event phase, an event card is drawn and the population number in the bottom right corner is checked against the current population. If it is less than or equal to the current population, the game ends. Otherwise, keep repeating these phases until the game eventually meets its end one way or the other. Whoever has the most mojo wins. Players with leftover building permits can trade them in for 1 cash each, and 5 cash can become 1 mojo. Alternatively, if someone has at least 11 of the 21 city council seats 2 rounds in a row, they are automatically the winner, regardless of what the population currently is. And that is Urban Tribes. Well, of course, Urban Tribes has a very lighthearted theme when you first look at it, with these different tribes of people representing different social classes. Some of them that in popular culture have stigma, like hipsters. I think all of them do to some degree or another, sometimes lovingly though. But the fact of the matter is, this is actually a deep game. This is a very heavy, I wouldn't say very heavy, but there is heavy aspects of strategy in the game. So it can be a little bit deceptive at first. I think that's the interesting balancing act that Urban Tribes has to perform, is to have a game that has a bright, colorful, and interesting and different type of theme than what you usually see with a tile-laying city-building game. But it is a tile-laying city-building game with all the strategy that is involved with that. You need to very carefully manage your different resources, being cash and the building permits, which are limited, and you have to do so many different things with both of those things, cash and building permits. You have to build, but you sometimes have to demolish, and you have to add on, and you also have to make donations in order to get on the city council to get more building permits. So all these different things have to be juggled, and of course the core of the game, and how I believe most games would end, is by getting mojo, which is the victory points of the game. But how much are you going to invest in buildings that give you that, the cultural buildings, as opposed to the financial buildings, which are going to give you money, which you need? So it's trying to juggle these different things and keep them constantly in balance with each other in order to be producing as much mojo as possible, but not, splurging all at once and then, I have no engine to get more cash and things like that. So, surprisingly deep game, despite the lighthearted theme attached to it. So, very interesting in that regard. There's also interesting aspects of and realistic aspects of I can't be an island unto myself. I can't just, be like Lex Luthor and build up the city in my image. I have to help. I have to work together with other players and make joint ventures, because it's there's this lot. If I want to negotiate and actually get something done and get more income coming in, sometimes I'm going to have to negotiate with the other players, and that's an interesting aspect of the game and something that you don't see in a lot of other games. So they actually describe it, I believe, in the rulebook as like a co-opetition, some word like that, and that seems pretty appropriate here. It's mainly competitive, but you do have to work together at times, and I'd almost think that you cannot win just by going solo in this game. At some point, you will have to work with other people, and you will have to go off on your own as well at the same time, at different times of the game. So lots of interesting things there. The whole aspect with the event cards, which can be very powerful, but you have a very limited quantity of them, so it sort of balances out in that regard, as well as the fact that you have the two different ways to win the game. I think that a political victory, where you would have the most seats on the council 2 rounds in a row, is difficult, but it is possible. So lots of different varied things going on in the game, and yet at the same time, this is not overwhelmingly heavy. I think it's pretty easy to learn. I think it's relatively fast to learn as well. The concepts are very intuitive, so you'll pick up on them right away, especially if you're familiar with strategy and tile laying and building games. So if any of those things appeal to you, if you want a game for people who are maybe newer to strategy in some Euro games, but it's not too overwhelmingly heavy for them. And if you yourself like this type of theme and also like the fun sort of aspect of the urban tribes themselves, then definitely you want to check this one out. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Urban Tribes from designer Richard Gurley. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.